Alright YouTube, so we are finally here with our first official Remake Part 2 video, or as we now know it to be called, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Feels so damn good. That being said, it is still, of course, the Remake project, and at this point we can assume that the third game within the trilogy that is now confirmed to be a trilogy, that's fantastic, is going to have an RE subtitle as well. And actually, speaking of the trilogy confirmation, I've seen some people getting like really excited, like, I told you so, I told you guys there's going to be like a trilogy, and it's like, that's something we've been talking about forever, man. Like, for 7 years now, literally over 7 years at this point, we've been talking about Remake project being a trilogy. It's like, not really surprised, that's kind of what we all thought. It's really just the people that just don't like the Remake game, or what they're doing with Remake, that were claiming is going to be 4, 5, 6 games or whatever. Like, the vast majority of us, like 99% of us, have been calling it a trilogy since 2015. So today I just wanted to kind of talk about the trailer, do a bit of a trailer breakdown. There's not a lot to break down. It's a pretty short, like, minute-and-a-half trailer or so. And you're not seeing, like, a bunch of locations and monsters and combat and stuff like that. You're really just seeing, like, Cloud and Sephiroth, like, on their way to Mount Nibel. And then you're seeing, like, obviously, Cloud and Zack on their way to Midgard. That's kind of what you're seeing, and you got shit in the background that's being told to you. But it's also important to take note of when it comes to this trailer, as is most things when it comes to Final Fantasy VII and probably the Final Fantasy series as a whole. The Japanese version is quite a bit different. I kind of touched on this in my reaction, but in the part of the trailer where Cloud says, "You were here with me 5 years ago, where are you now?" Something like that from the trailer.
You were here with me 5 years ago. Where are you?
The Japanese version, he name drops Zack. He's specifically talking to Zack in that moment.
5年前俺たちは一緒にここに来たのかザックスどこにいるんだ
And see, when I initially did my reaction video, after I finished it, while I was editing the video, I was on social media, because then at that point, nothing could be spoiled for me, and I've seen people talking about the possibility of Cloud talking about Tifa in that moment, and I was like, actually, that kind of makes a little bit of sense, because Tifa was there 5 years ago. Even in the original game, there's a bit of confusion of whether or not Cloud's misremembering, Tifa's misremembering, both of them, whatever the case, they're both confused when they get to Nibelheim and it's still intact. So initially, while editing the reaction, I took out the part where I talk about Cloud maybe referencing Zack in that moment, or whatever the case, and my theory of Cloud finding out the truth sooner. And then I came across Audrey's translation, where in the Japanese trailer, he specifically name dropped Zack. I was like, God damn, I gotta edit that bitch back in. And I want to talk about this moment first, because in my opinion, it's the biggest moment of the trailer entirely, because we're having Cloud remembering Zack before he's supposed to. Like, that's something I've been saying for a long time, because Cloud doesn't remember who Zack is or what really happened in Nibelheim until the Midil segment, right? And as far as people have been speculating on Part 2, where it's going to end at, the furthest anybody's ever gotten in terms of speculation is the North Crater. And Midil happens after the North Crater. So unless the game's going beyond North Crater, Cloud's got to learn the truth sooner somehow. I mean, if you think back to Final Fantasy VII Remake, I mean, Aerith even says the name Zack to Cloud, but he doesn't hear it, right? He blinks it out, it gives him the headache, all that other shit. So for Cloud to be saying Zack's name specifically is a pretty huge moment. Now, we don't know how far into the FF7 story Part 2 is going to go. We could go all the way to Midil. Maybe that's just a line taken from super late into the game. That is, of course, a possibility. In terms of, like, Cloud learning the truth sooner, where that would be at, we don't entirely know, of course. The problem with altering this scene from the original FF7 is it's one of the most important scenes from the original Final Fantasy VII. It's a lot of the devs' favorite scenes, the live stream scene in Midil. The thing is, you can do that in a different spot, because all that needs to happen is Cloud's mind break, and then him and Tifa, or him and whoever, fall into the live stream, and then they repair his mind. That's really all that has to happen. It doesn't specifically have to happen in the town of Midil. That can happen anywhere where there's access to the live stream, right? And that's pretty much any Mako reactor. They have, like, I mean, that's how Sephiroth ended up in the North Crater, right? Cloud threw him down to the bottom of a reactor, and he, like, traveled all the way to the North Crater through the live stream. So again, Cloud learning the truth sooner, it's kind of hard to say how they would do that. I think Nibelheim is a good location, just because that's kind of the culmination of everything. That's where it all began. It's where it all should kind of end, where Cloud should learn the truth and shit like that. I think that makes a lot of sense, instead of some random town of Midil in the original game. As much as I like the scene, it's a great scene in the original FF7, but it's happening in a random-ass spot. You could learn the truth in a different location. That's not a big deal. Now, before we hop into the trailer breakdown, they did put out some messages from the devs on Twitter, Hamaguchi, Kitase, and Nomura, but really, it's only Nomura's, like, message that really matters. So Nomura says, as revealed on the broadcast, there are currently 4 Final Fantasy VII projects being developed in parallel. Although each of the 4 titles plays a different role, they are all connected through the high-quality depictions of Final Fantasy VII's world and characters. As someone who was involved with the development of each and every one of the original titles, I deeply understand the vision and thoughts behind each project, and I'm actively involved in the development process for all 4 titles. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is being designed so that people can enjoy this game whether they know the original game or not. In fact, new players might even enjoy starting their Final Fantasy VII journey with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Cloud and his friends embark on a new journey in this game, and I believe that the scenes that they witness after leaving Midgard will give players a fresh, new experience. There's a lot to unpack from that, obviously, because he talks about 4 different titles being made in parallel, and I'm assuming what he means by that is Rebirth, whatever the 3rd remake game is, Ever Crisis, and the Crisis Core Reunion. I'm not entirely sure what he means by the games playing different roles, but also being connected, unless they're going to add to like the overall remake story, which is certainly possible. Some people do think that the Crisis Core Reunion, like remaster, is not just going to be remastered. Like some people are speculating on a possible like new ending. I'm not necessarily against that. It's just, it depends on what this game is for. If it's meant to be a tie-in directly with Remake, then I could understand them wanting to alter some aspects of it to make it tie into Remake. That makes some sense. But also, as far as we know, only Zack living was the thing that was altered, right? So I guess maybe they would have to change the ending in that regard. I don't know. When it comes to breaking down this trailer, I'm not sure if we should really go into the dialogue too much just because of how different the English and the Japanese are when it comes to this trailer. But also, like, I've seen multiple translations of the Japanese trailer and they're like somewhat different. Like I've seen like TurquoiseHammer's translation, but also Audrey's, and they're similar in some aspects, but then there's other aspects where they're not. Like the scene from the English trailer where Tifa talks about Cloud, thinking she's an imposter or whatever. Like Audrey's translations is a bit similar to that, and then TurquoiseHammer's is way different. And their translation of "you think I'm a different person than I was back then" is drastically different than the possibility of an imposter or somebody else being there in the past instead of Tifa or whatever the case. Like, those are way different things. So I don't know whose translation would be more accurate, and I know people don't like when I speak ill of Audrey here and there, but like her translations are the most reliable, and I know Japanese is hard to translate, but she also had a tweet out for a very long time yesterday about Intergrade coming to PS4, which is simply untrue. It's wildly untrue, and it got a lot of people excited, and she eventually did delete the tweet, but it was ridiculous that she even put that out there because we've known forever that was never going to happen. I suppose we could do another comparison between the trailers actually. With like the beginning part of the English trailer, Aerith talks about how like the past essentially can't be changed, and even if the future's set in stone, it can still be altered, all this other shit. Like the Japanese version, it's like nothing like that at all. So it's hard to even talk about the dialogue. Like I really only wanted to focus on like the Zack shit because that's the one thing that kind of matters really. So one of the biggest takeaways from this trailer is at the very beginning we see a white feather falling down to where like Zack and Cloud are walking. A lot of people are thinking that this is Angel, and that makes a lot of sense because he's kind of the only person that's ever like had a white wing, if I'm not mistaken, when it comes to FF7, right? Because Genesis has a black wing, Sephiroth of course also has a black wing, and even when Cloud had that weird ass wing in Kingdom Hearts, it was also black, but it didn't have feathers. That being said, we did have Lazard in Crisis Core getting the white wings eventually, but he's also becoming an Angel copy, so at the end of the day, it still comes down to Angel. So that's kind of what that feather has to be at the beginning. Unless they're just fucking with us, which I don't think is the case, but we do see like some white doves flying at the very beginning of the trailer, so unless it's just a fucking feather falling off that damn bird, it's gotta be Angel. Now, why would Angel's feather be there? That's kind of hard to say. We've talked about the possibility of like a Laguna Squall type story when it comes to Remake, where we're kind of cutting between Zack and Cloud and everything. And with Cloud's story so far in Remake, he keeps getting the black feather and seeing Sephiroth everywhere, right? So what if Zack has a similar thing with the white feather? What if he's seeing white feathers everywhere and he keeps getting visited by Angel? And maybe Angel's guiding him, trying to help him with whatever his task is. That'd be kind of cool. Other than that, I really don't know why the white feather would be there outside of Angel and Angel helping Zack or something like that. So for now, that's kind of what my headcanon is until we know further. And then we get the cool ass reveal of Cloud and Sephiroth walking together, and I'm not 100% what I think this is, whether it's like the walk to Nibelheim or the walk from Nibelheim to Mount Nibel. But we do only see Cloud and Sephiroth together, so it might be the walk to Nibelheim. We don't know how far they had to travel either. Like with the calm flashback in the back of the truck, they seemed to drive for quite a while. They had to stop, fight the Green Dragon. Who knows how far they had to walk from the Green Dragon fight to Nibelheim, right? So maybe that's what this is. And also, I kind of say that because we don't really see Nibelheim like on the horizon anywhere in front of us, so that's why I'm not sure if they're walking to Mount Nibel here. I'm just not 100% on anything. Then we get another equally as badass scene of Cloud and Sephiroth walking, and the foliage is a bit different. You're starting to see some dead trees, and they get up to like a ravine or something that's down in front of them. I almost said crater, but that has like different connotations when you're talking about FF7, right? But if you look off to the right, you can see like a Mako pipe. There's a building up there, maybe a factory or something. A little bit further in the distance, there's a radio tower. Off to Cloud's like far left, there's another Mako pipe. But down in front of Cloud, it's kind of hard to see when you're watching the trailer because it's very, very brief. It's like half a second or a second. There's definitely some buildings out in front of him, like down in this ravine in front of him. And I don't know if that's meant to be where Nibelheim's at these days, like with a modern interpretation of Nibelheim or whatever the case, or if it's a completely different like buildings or locations or towns or something on the way to Nibelheim or something on the way from Nibelheim to Mount Nibel. It's just really hard to say. And then we get more of the white feather and Zack dragging Cloud to Midgar. And this is something I point out with my reaction, that this should imply that we're going to get some sort of in-between when it comes to the ending of base game Remake and the ending of episode intermission, because there's like a time jump there, right? We see like Zack kind of surviving and starting to drag Cloud towards Midgar, and then episode intermission shows us Zack already in Midgar at the Sector 5 church, and we don't know what happened in between there, and this is kind of given the implication that we're going to be shown that. One of the other important takeaways from this is that we're seeing blood, at least with this trailer, when you like do the side-by-side comparison of the ending of Remake, where it looked more like Zack was dirty than injured. With this trailer, you've definitely seen like scratches and like dried red spots and blood coming out of his mouth and shit like that. Like, that's pretty cool. We're probably not going to see like gory shit like people are wanting. It's not going to be M-rated, because at least not according to this that popped up at the very beginning of the 25th anniversary celebration. It looks like everything that was shown is only going to be as high as a teen rating. But at least maybe with Rebirth, they'll try to like push that teen rating as far as they can. And then we have this final shot of the trailer before it cuts to like the title of part 2. It's super, super important, because what you're looking at is them, of course, rebuilding the Sector 6 plate that was destroyed years ago with the Zirconiad fight and shit, right? It should be fairly obvious to all of us that the Sector 7 plate is still there. So this is taking place for sure in the past. It's not happening sometime after the Sector 7 plate fall. So that means that all the like the theory crafting and discussions we did in the past was simply more skybox issues with Remake. So fuck me. I did see some people sharing like this image and being like, oh my god, the Shinra building's missing. And it's like, my dude, we're like 10 feet from the walls of Midgar. You would not see the Shinra building from this angle, but unless there's more technical issues on Square Enix's end, we've already seen the Shinra building in Zack's timeline, altered timeline, whatever. And then of course we get the title/logo reveal, and we talked about with that leak the other day what Rebirth could stand for, so we don't need to go into that too much. I did have some people freaking out about that leak because the title ended up being the same, but apparently like Rebirth was a pretty common thought of name. I've only ever really heard Reunion, but apparently that's a thing. People are putting quite a bit of emphasis on like the flash of red that we get when it comes to the logo, whether that means like bad shit in the future, death, blood, whatever. It could be Vincent, could be Genesis. It's hard to really know, but I think Genesis is definitely likely. And then we of course have the release window of next winter, which is roughly about December of 2023 to like the first few months of 2024. Which I just so much love that all this happened, just because some people didn't think we'd be even seeing part 2 just because they already showed us 16, so it's like impossible for that to happen. But not only did they show us part 2, they gave us a goddamn release window, and it's not too long after whenever 16 is going to come out. 16 is releasing next summer, and part 2 is coming out next winter. Like, they're so close together, and I love that's happening now, because some people think that shit's impossible, and I've just never thought that. Like, we have the possibility of Final Fantasy XVI and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth dropping within the same year, but at the very least within the same fiscal year, which again, people seem to think is impossible sometimes. But my dudes, I think that's going to be pretty much it. There's a lot we didn't touch on when it comes to like the reveal, just because it's stuff we've kind of already talked about. Like, one of the like the text on screen that says like, what is Sephiroth's endgame? Like, we've speculated on this for a lot. Like, what is Sephiroth's actual goal with Remake, right? So we don't need to really touch on that type of shit. They also show like Meteor and like, you know, Aerith's death and Genova and stuff like that. Stuff we've already seen with Remake Part 1. There's just a lot of the trailer that we didn't have to really talk about. That being said, there probably are some details about the trailer that I've missed out on. I do feel like I'm missing something I wanted to talk about, but I wasn't even 100% if I was going to make a video today. But here we are. So let me know if there's anything I missed, and any sort of important details out there, because I feel like there is. Other than my dudes, that's the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, give a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new ones today. More Final Fantasy VII Rebirth content. Turn on notifications. Follow me on Twitter, @DaveYT. I'm a Discord. Links to social networks are in the description and in the outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain, or leave it like Cobain.